All right, everyone's had some lunch and hopefully seen some cool 3D food printing or food robots. And we're gonna have a conversation about platforms. I think everyone has heard of these companies, except for maybe yours. I don't know if anyone's heard of Google, but why don't you quickly each tell about 30 seconds or less, what you do for your company and what you're working on.
Sure, yeah, hi. I'm a conversation designer for Google. That means I do VUI and multimodal design work for the Assistant, primarily in the shopping area.
My name is Kevin, CEO of SideChef. We have an all-in-one kind of home cooking platform. We were named Best Cooking Apps or Best Apps of 2017 by Google. And also working with groups to fulfill that whole cooking vision with Amazon Fresh for grocery delivery, working with lots of different content partners and also kitchen appliances such as GE, which we announced the Kitchen Hub today. So we're excited about that.
Great. I'm Kevin Brown. I'm CEO and co-founder of Innit. We've been working on building the smart kitchen platform that can connect the appliances, connect the food, and connect it all to consumers in the home. We have announced a major partnership with Google. We're working with 4 of the top 6 appliance companies and adding more all the time. And we are now working with some of the big food and CPG companies to pull this all together for the consumers.
So I think this is an interesting panel because we have 2 very deep vertical-focused platforms in SideChef and Innit, and then we have kind of more of a what I would call a horizontal technology platform layer in Google. So let me maybe start with you, Geoff, because you guys are working, for example, with Innit and just working with some of these companies where you're maybe not necessarily shoring up weaknesses, but kind of where you see companies going very deep. Is it necessary to even have a kitchen platform, if you will? Tell me what your opinion is on that.
Is it necessary to have a kitchen platform?
Yeah, I mean, it's because I think there are dedicated platforms in certain verticals, and now you guys work with it. I'm just curious, why the kitchen platform?
Well, it's the hub of productivity in the home. So I think yes, from that standpoint, for sure it is. I think that our focus, like you said, you called us the horizontal, right? Me working on the horizontal. I think what we're working on building here, even though I'm in shopping, is a foundation for ambient computing. And it's important then for us to build the kind of foundation that people with the expertise that Kevin and Kevin here can plug into meaningfully and serve people in the home where these needs really exist. And we see, at least from usage, a lot of the use of the Assistant and the things that we make and the things that other people make on them is driven from kitchen usage.
So I was at the announcement for Innit at the lunch block, and you guys are starting to do this integration where the different pieces are coming together, right? So you have like a shopping component that's now working with kind of the in the kitchen cooking component, and that's also working with a voice interface. So if you look back over the kind of this evolution since the first Smart Kitchen Summit, where we were just talking about ideas, to where you are today, talk a little bit about what you've kind of done, because there's been some steps along the way, but you guys have started to bring, I think, your vision together a little more fully.
That's right. So a couple of years ago on the stage, one of the things we talked about is that, made a prediction, what people are not going to do. What they're not going to do is open up 7 different apps to make dinner. So the fragmentation that existed, you could go find recipes, you could go find how-tos, there's some shopping, go read about nutrition, open up some, gadget apps. I mean, like that was not going to be how it all came together. So we looked at that and we said, look, there's big, heavy, deep, wells that we need to build of technology. One is how do you go deep in food? The other one is how do you go deep in cooking and appliances? And so both of those are very rich, complex areas. So when we made our announcement in terms of how do we connect those food products with Shopwell, we have 800,000 products we refresh daily. And so we've gone very deep on personalized nutrition, understanding how those products can come into the meal journey. Likewise, on the cooking side, we've now worked deeply with the appliance companies in doing very sort of sophisticated automated cooking, sending a 14-step Michelin star recipe to your smart oven that's tailored to your chicken and your oven and scaling that across dozens of models. So that's the heavy R&D that we looked at that needed to be done. So we spent the last 5 years doing that. And it's been really incredible to kind of be here with the community and building that and help pull it together.
Yeah, and I think, as I see this market build out a little bit, and I think one of the challenges, we're not only kind of expanding into cross-functional, we're also looking at different geographic expansion. Kevin, you guys started largely as what I saw as a cooking app, and then you started to move towards actually becoming somewhat of what we would call a platform, if you will. So you're talking about your integration state with some of your partners. So talk about that journey for you guys, and kind of what are the challenges you found, particularly as you help the appliance makers solve for those. What are the challenges that they've had as well?
Yeah, our expertise has always been as a software developer. We're originally from game development. We wanted to just tackle one problem at a time, and so we kind of focused first on the app side, thus the focusing on the best experience there, winning some awards, kind of moving forward, building engagement there, and then we started bringing on partners and really building trust with kitchen manufacturers and then also content players consistently join up with our platform just one by one, brick by brick. I mean, the vision has always been the same, right? Just as Kevin has mentioned, how do we tie the whole entire cooking journey into one place? I believe there is going to be like an Uber or a Lyft, where we can solve that problem. At the end of the day, I think that's what we need to solve as a group. Like, where is this one destination that really, truly solves that problem? That's the value proposition that we're all kind of adding. So for us, adding each partners, thankfully, we've been working with great partners in each of these categories, such as Amazon Fresh, who, is able to do the grocery delivery right now. You can jump on a SideChef, choose what you want to make 2 hours later. Send it all to your shopping list 2 hours later, have it at your door. That is already pretty cool. But then having the smart connectivity portion, if they want that, if they want the guidance, here's also that bonus. If they are a millennial who doesn't know, how to chop this onion, we have those videos. But how do we show what people need to know when they need to know it? And that's kind of along with personalization, which is obviously a big topic that we talked a little bit backstage. It's a great kind of area to kind of further develop.
So I think it was on the inventors panel, one of the questions I was asked is, how do you get appliance makers to kind of get out of their somewhat cautious nature, right? So I think one of the audience questions was that. So I think that they oftentimes turn to partners. So are you finding that appliance makers, as they start to explore executing on kind of integrating your platforms to offer new features, are they becoming less cautious, or is this the nature of the beast where they're just going to be reserved and oftentimes just leave it to third parties to do all the exploration and the risk?
Well, one way to look at this is that there's a natural cycle to building hardware, which is generally longer than software. So that's a transition that companies are going through. How do we move to more agile development? How do we innovate at that cycle? But one of the other barriers is there was some disagreement as to what we should do. And what's been really remarkable in the last year or two is seeing that coalesce. Everyone's understanding the same consumer journey: plan, shop, prep, cook. Everyone's understanding that software is now going to be a major part of appliances, just as it was in automotive, just as it was in many of these other verticals. And so now that there's enough strategic understanding and an agreement on that, now we're moving into a more productive sort of phase where everyone's really building. And what's been very helpful is to have some good API interface layers where there's a natural division of labor. And what we've seen is most of the appliance platforms saying, look, we know that it needs to have some openness. We need to be able to connect different things to it. And so we're seeing a lot of people say, look, let's go for the right consumer journey that can connect the planning, the shopping. How do we find the right foods, help people prepare them, bring in content, celebrity chefs? How do we bring in sort of new programs to get the most out of those appliances? All of that requires some ecosystem approach, and so that's something that's been really gratifying, is to be working with some of these great amazing brands and together putting together that vision of how do we have a great consumer experience.
Yeah, Kevin, coming out of video games, I would imagine it's a much different type of customer set you're working with in terms of this is a little bit more reserved. So tell me a little bit, kind of the same question. Are you seeing, as you work with these appliance makers, a little more kind of less risk aversity because they do see that the industry's changing so fast? They may be more worried about their place if they don't innovate?
I think, having seen Smart Kitchen Summit develop as well over the past years, seeing the trust that has kind of developed from that, it really is the most important. From my experience of working with a lot of these kitchen manufacturers or other companies, such as Amazon for, working on with them on the Echo side, or, working with a GE, again, the Kitchen Hub project, really, there needs to be trust developed in working with a startup. A startup is not only software, but also just too new of a concept, in which I think a lot of people are still digesting. And I think the best way we can show our work is really through not just connecting with them and building things, but challenging each other. How do we build more or farther? How does that 1 + 1 = 3? But what does that look like? I think the Kitchen Hub was a great example today of what that looks like and feels like, and actually is interactive with customers. How do we keep challenging ourselves to do that? And for startups, most important, how do we keep delivering and earning that trust as well too? Since we are the new players that are kind of coming about the field.
So Kevin was talking a little bit about car stacks a little bit, and just in the mobile world, there's obviously the Android stack that became fairly ubiquitous across a bunch of different IoT type of devices. As I see products mature, or as I see early markets, there's oftentimes disparate software. Then ultimately, the OS oftentimes will start to integrate features. Do you think that Google would ever get to the world, a place where they start to integrate kitchen-centric features, or do you think you always will rely on third-party platforms in deep verticals like cooking and kitchen?
I mean, it can go any direction, right? I think that we have to be interested in and willing to go wherever there's need and wherever we help the users best. I'll tell you, like, I think about what we were talking about earlier with the environmental impact of food waste and the potential for some of these technologies to make a big impact there. When I hear us talking about appliances making decisions, durable goods, consumer goods, like making decisions about what kind of platform to build and plug into. And I sure don't envy those kinds of engineering and design choices, right? Because refrigerators don't get refreshed nearly as often as telephones, right? And they're a lot bigger to recycle and throw the parts of into a landfill. So, I think like part of the way that I think about answering your question there is how can we build and support that's in a way that's most responsible and like most responds to the very real environmental and material and physical constraints that exist in kitchens and in the objects that we bring into them.
You work largely, I think, with kind of voice-centric design. You do work somewhat, I think, with the video team, right? But you're largely focused on voice?
Yeah, I wanted to just make a little bit of disambiguation here because throughout the day I've heard voice conflated with conversation design.
Yeah, conversation.
Somebody made a point earlier that I think is really important, and it's that all conversation is inherently multimodal, right? I'm gesticulating, you're nodding, we're making eye contact. Even when I'm on the phone with somebody and I can't see them, I'm looking at a calendar or a picture, or I'm playing with something in my hand. And so VUI is certainly a component of that, and my focus is probably 70% on the VUI component. So a lot of my work is for the Google Home speaker, but another 30% is on the multimodal surfaces like the new Lenovo displays.
I don't know if you can speak to data, but in terms of, it seems like around cooking-centric behavior, and I think you guys can attest to this, video is hugely important in my mind. And I think we're going to see a potential leap in terms of like adoption of skills and make them more sticky. Are you seeing any data you can speak to around video-centric skills once you start to add kind of that multimodal component? Any difference in terms of adoption and retention?
So I can't speak to data, but no, play that. That was good. That's probably an answer we can give. Yeah, no, I think that we're putting a lot of effort into design for the multimodal space, and that's because communication just requires more than the voice stream, which is, this is linear and sequenced, right? It's much harder to follow complex things.
In about 2 years, we'll just have a Google Assistant, and I'll interview them, so we don't even need people at that point. But by the way, guys, start thinking of a question for Slido. I want to go to Slido. I think this could be a good panel to ask questions, because if you have questions about building products with platforms, these are the guys to talk to. One of the interesting kind of displays out there is a company called Open Meals. They're doing this digitization around food, trying to create like this understanding of food in a digital format to allow you to kind of transfer ideas across geographies, et cetera. You with your Shopwell integration, you just have this rich set of data. What's kind of the end game here? Where do you ultimately see that going from a consumer value standpoint? I know there's shopping and commerce data, but does this become like this data set that can allow you to really understand food in a much richer way to do more things as a consumer?
Yeah. So think about every other part of your life. Music, movies, taxi cabs, hotel rooms, everything else has evolved to the easy button. So something very personalized happens, my playlist finishes, and Spotify knows exactly the songs it should go pick for me. The car knows exactly where I'm standing and how many people I need to carry. So all of these examples of different verticals have been revolutionized and turned into very important software platforms, by the way, because they are able to crack the code on simplifying and getting something that was personalized, that was right, and it worked, and you could just repeat it again and again. So the play here of going deep on the food information, deep on the cooking, is that you can get the right foods in a very granular way that meet people's needs, and sort of, kick them off on the journey. But if it doesn't taste good at the end, if you haven't transformed that into something that's better than going out to a restaurant, they're just going to go out to the restaurant. And so in order for this whole thing to work, it has to taste great. And so those are both two very, very hard problems, but they're both very data-driven. And so this is where, today we have to start setting up those platforms and those loops to be learning from those, so that as more and more of that behavior is happening within a given family or across the board, we can just get better and better asymptotically.
So it looks like we have some questions from the audience. And the first one actually is, I was kind of thinking about in that, does the fear of siloed ecosystems, kind of in early markets, things are siloed, the data sets often don't transfer. Does the fear of siloed ecosystems scare off consumers from greater adoption of the smart kitchen? Anyone?
Well, in this market, for the most part, if you look at major appliances, there's now kind of a separation between you can make a choice on a major appliance, and now there's increasing number of choices of things that you could run on it. So it's a little bit less risky than having something that's hard locked. But over time, the way these things work is that once something works and you get going, and you start to get comfortable and do it more. So I think there will be choices that people make of their favorite platforms, but I think inherently this is one that will be a little bit more open than some other markets.
Yeah, I think sooner or later you're going to have refrigerators where you plug it in, turn it on, and one of the first questions you ask in the out-of-box experience is, do you want to sign in with your Amazon account or your Google account or your, et cetera, et cetera. Hopefully.
So is that the first step of that, was the Amazon microwave? You see, ultimately you'll turn that on, and you'll have to kind of sign into your Google.
I'm not sure I can sign into my Google
No,
account from the Amazon
Amazon
microwave.
account. So I think we're going down that path. There's another question I want to ask, and it's kind of related, right? So will we get to the point where we choose our kitchen in the same way we choose iOS or Android?
I think this is a part that seems to be kind of inevitable right now. I don't think the players that are involved, like iOS and Android, is going to be so clear. I do think that this conferences such as this is a great platform for a lot of potential competitors before to really get together, figure out how do we work together as a whole ecosystem? How do we build something that is of value to those consumers in new ways that really is seamless, interoperable, so forth. That's everything from kitchen guides to content to grocers and so forth. And it's really at this point, we're rushing to find that actual engagement, the actual experience that really cracks it open where everybody will be using this. Until we get to that point, that's where everybody really is on the same page still.
Yeah, I mean, this is really a personal answer, but gosh, I hope we never get to that point, because where rubber meets the road on this is people leasing apartments and buying homes. And appliances in the kitchens come with the apartments and the homes. And it just creates a tremendous dearth of actual choice if we have platform lock-in determining what house we can buy.
One of the questions I have is, we see a lot of announcements from you guys, and rightly so, you want to kind of talk about your wins, but talk a little bit about how deep these relationships are, because if you're announcing with a GE or an LG, and then another startup announces with those guys, it's often confusing to kind of the industry observer. What does that mean? Is LG just kind of jumping in the sheets with a lot of different platforms? They're just kind of sampling. I mean, how do you kind of educate how do you figure out how deep the relationship is?
Well, so we were just in Berlin at a show. We were with the CEO of LG, and they're partners with both of us. And so what they're coming out and saying publicly is that we know that customers want some choice. So there's going to be different options. We built connectivity in. We built a platform that can support some choice, and so come and get it. And so that's where each of us are really able to go deep and say, here's a unique experience that we can bundle together with the appliances. But over time, I think that we're not going to want to have lock-ins of things for 15 years for that full life cycle of an appliance. You're going to have, it's a platform that's going to be able to run different kinds of software loads and different integrations. And I think that's right for the consumer. And we're very comfortable going out there, taking our unique strengths and sort of having platforms adopt that. So it's actually made it easier for us to have that open platform approach, because instead of fighting with the internal teams over we want to build it, it's now, okay, we know that we need to let people in. And so it's gotten us really out to market and cooking dinner for people every night a lot sooner.
Yeah, and I think another big differentiator too is checking out the actual products, right? We're still in a lot of theory, but there's development that's happening. Check out the Kitchen Hub project, which I really commend GE for going out there and trying to build something that is innovative, that really addresses the user. How do we, even the Amazon Echo as well too, how do we build guided cooking in a way where it is really truly seamless and solves the problem there? We are working, with partners, not just to do connectivity, which we obviously offer, but how do we push ourselves, again, going back to the same message, building something that has a chance, at least, to be able to really crack that puzzle. And so that's what we are mostly focused on. All of our partners have projects with us that really kind of push that limit, and hopefully one of these will take this whole entire conversation that one next step farther.
So let's take another question from the audience. Who will be the data owner of eating and cooking going forward? Will someone integrate? So I guess it's a question about who owns the data. Is there going to be kind of a master owner of all that data? Because obviously privacy is becoming a bigger concern. If every action I do around eating and cooking is starting to kind of be stored somewhere on a server, that may be a little worrisome. I'll go to the Google guy for that question.
The hackers are going to own the data. Really, I think this is that's only half joking. I think this is a question about the perpetual balance between user privacy and ease of use, and it's a question that we are constantly trying to come to the right answer for, and we're going to have to just keep grinding away the same way we do on other problems.
We're in the land grab phase of I think kind of announcements. So you guys continue to work with a bunch of different partners. Talk a little bit about kind of what's next in terms of kind of I think we're starting to see rubber meets the road a little bit. We're starting to see kind of more of these products actually come to market. As you kind of enter to the second generation of product, for example, talk a little bit about what we can expect over the next year to 2 years in terms of more mature smart kitchen platform.
Well, so from a business perspective, one of the things that's very, very important is to be able to not only get functionality up and running, but then to really build deep differentiation for each of the partners so that they can really express what they're best at, and we can help bring that value to the consumer. So think of, I've got Sonos at home, and I can put Spotify and Pandora and various services in there, and when I'm in my Spotify, I've got a good, branded, rich experience that makes Spotify better. It connects to my speakers. It's just better when it's together. And so that level of differentiation of working together to really bring out the best in their appliances. So we test every single family of appliance that we're integrating with, and we're finding the best cooking features. What are the differentiated capabilities? Maybe it's steam cooking. Maybe it's a really powerful new convection, whatever the piece is. And how do we apply that in a way that there's consumer value? So it's now extracting the value. So there's many cooking features that are on appliances, but the problem is people just go home and they bake at 350. And so that kind of just, if it's just remote control, if it's just simple, they're not getting all of the incredible investment and value that's in that device. And that's the win-win. If we can give people a reason to connect, if we can then build differentiated services, over time you're going to see a shift from all hardware value to now there's subscription value and there's upgradable software value. So think of your Tesla where you get a software upgrade and now it has ludicrous mode. So there's both a technology sort of innovation that has to happen, but then there's business model innovations that layer on top. And when you multiply those by each other, that's where you can get some really powerful outcomes. And I think in terms of the business model for many of these players, I think it's exciting.
Yeah, we had that. Go ahead, Kevin.
Well, also to kind of add on, like for us, maybe this is a little bit different, maybe not, but we're going to keep coming out with lots of partners, features, and I'm sure there's announcements around those things. But I really hope, like 2019, our announcements are around what we believe matter the most to us and then to our partners is engagement. We want to show engagement. We want to show people cooking. We want to show people are actually using this because at the end of the day, in our opinion, that's what we want to deliver to our partners because that's the only thing that matters. Once we really knock that out of the park, then everything else comes afterwards. So that's a lot of our focus, and that's what we want, again, as you were mentioning in terms of announcements in the future, that's what we want to focus on.
And we had the conversation last year it was the RF cooking panel, but this analogy of to early digital television years where you saw the rollout of digital television, you saw an expansion of spectrum, and then saw a whole array of new kind of digital services. It seems like we're kind of maybe entering that era around food, right, where we can actually start to offer value-added services. I heard you kind of talking some of that language around food through subscriptions and kind of new service offerings, right?
Well, hardware over time is a business that always is fighting to keep margins. And so what we've seen in other places, look at the automobile industry, again, it's like there's more and more of the value that's going to the dashboard, that's going to the software platforms that are driving that, and that's good. And once you have that hardware there, you now have permission to deliver software value for the next 15 years. So it's a really great position to be in, I think, for these incredible brands that, in some cases have been, coming into homes for 100+ years, to now have a next chapter to that of having a whole rich new set of services. And that's where, working with partners in an ecosystem to connect it can get that done a lot quicker, can make it a lot richer.
So, Geoff, when you talk to appliance makers and having your software on theirs, I mean, it is kind of like, June talked about how, we're the first software upgradable oven, and in a way, seeing appliances improve through software maybe is a new concept for appliance makers, right? So, when you work with industries who more traditionally don't have this upgrade through software mentality like you do in the smartphone space, are you seeing that starting to change? Are they starting to kind of get it? We can expect our product to gain value over time?
Certainly, and everybody's getting interest, and people are picking up the skills at different paces. It's really gratifying to consult with people on how to make the conversational experiences on their native hardware and in their apps, et cetera, better, more usable, and more seamless with the platform.
To your earlier question, the video experiences that these guys are now enabling in the kitchen are going to be transformative. Those kitchen computers are going to make a huge difference. When we've been showing people what it can now display in terms of the step-by-step cooking and so forth, I want to really give kudos because these devices are really looking great.
We're out of time, but I do want to ask you, Geoff, do you guys think of your multimodal video devices as essentially kitchen computers? Because you talked about it, you said as the center of the home. Do you see it as kind of, do you actually think of it as kitchen computers?
I wouldn't be surprised if that's where most of them end up. Yeah. It's on my desk at work right now. But yes. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if that's where most of them end up.
All right, well, give these guys a round of applause. I also want to ask a favor. Can you guys move in? We have some people standing in the aisle. So, all right, thank you guys. Appreciate it.